I'm Dana Perino along with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. President Trump has a big decision to make. Will the U.S. retaliate against Syria? Bashar Assad accused of using poison gas again on his own people.
It was an atrocious attack. It was horrible. You don't see things like that, as bad as the news is around the world. You just don't see those images. We are studying that situation extremely closely. We are meeting with our military and everybody else, and we'll be making some major decisions over the next 24 to 48 hours. We are very concerned when a thing like that can happen. This is about humanity. We're talking about humanity, and it can't be allowed to happen.
The president is also putting Russia and Iran on notice, suggesting they may have played a role and could face serious consequences as well.
He may, yeah, he may. And if he does, it's going to be very tough. Very tough.
He'll pay a price.
Everybody's going to pay a price. He will. Everybody will. Excuse me?
U.S. military action, is it off the table?
Nothing's off the table.
The attack in the town of Douma outside Damascus reportedly killed at least 40 people, many of them children. It comes almost exactly a year after the U.S. retaliated for the last Syrian gas massacre. An Emergency Security Council meeting held at the United Nations this afternoon. Greg, a lot of people wondering if the United Nations would actually put any teeth behind or into this action. The attack came at the breakdown of talks between Assad and the rebels.
Yeah, the timing for this is so weird. President Trump says we're pulling out, and a chemical attack presents itself, which kind of says not yet. Mm-hmm. And there are very smart people, far smarter than me on this, who believe that Syria is behind this. Tom Rogan wrote a piece today in the Washington Examiner, and I think Senator McCain. This doesn't make sense to me for two reasons. Number one, Syria can't hide from retribution. So clearly, if they're responsible, they will be bombed. It's not like they can run to the mountains. Mm-hmm. We're going to get you. We're going to bomb your airports. Your Air Force will be gone. Number two, if you want America to leave, why would you do this? Maybe I'm not that bright, but why would you do this? But anyway, aside from that, we're still going to retaliate. And the reason why we're going to retaliate is because Assad is like O.J. Simpson. O.J. didn't get found guilty of his real crimes, of killing Nicole and Ron, right? He was found guilty of a later charge for armed robbery and kidnapping. The fact is, Assad has done enough bad stuff that if he didn't do this, so what?
Well, to your point, Jesse, perhaps I think that Assad has decided that the benefits of victory outweigh the possible repercussions from the West.
Right. He's desperate, and I think he's on his heels in this village where the rebels have really turned it up a notch. And I don't believe that he would do this without Russia's knowledge beforehand. They're the sponsor and they're the puppet master. But Trump was handed a mess in Syria, and that's not my comment. That's Obama's National Security Council spokesman, Tommy Vietor, who actually just said that himself the other day. And here's why. When Obama was president, there was a big leadership vacuum in the region, and Russia came in to fill it. Now, we remember the beginning of this civil war. The Obama administration spent $500 million to train 5 Syrian rebel fighters. So it was a waste from the jump. And then you have this incredible gas attack where Obama drew a red line, didn't respond, and Putin had to swoop in and then help President Obama save face and organize this group to rid Syria of these chemical weapons. And people like John Kerry and Susan Rice bragged about bringing all the chemical weapons out of there. President Obama himself said it was the crowning achievement of his foreign policy legacy. That's obviously in tatters now. And it didn't help, sending, I think, almost $2 billion in cash to the Iranians. So right now you have a proxy war, and it's probably just tribal. It brings in the great powers, America and Russia, but you have the Saudis and the Iranians too going at it because there's a major natural gas pipeline, which obviously I don't understand, but they're trying to reroute it to the European Union. And
I think you understand it.
Okay.
That's what they're trying to do.
And Russia has, this port city that gives its Navy access to the Mediterranean. They want to keep a hold on that. They have an air base with about 1,000 1,000 personnel, and Syria allows the Iranian Navy access to the Saudis, the Israelis, and our rebels, and they're getting desperate. And I think Putin's probably hurting from the sanctions, and his oligarch friends are hurting from the sanctions, and energy prices are low, and they're just trying to test our resolve. And I believe, and you can see President Trump seething when he's crossing his arms like that. The last time he crossed his arms like that was the fire and fury comment. So I think they're going to pay, like he said, a very steep price.
Juan, every major player is there. The United States and our Western allies. Russia, Iran, perhaps North Korea, because we know that North Korea had been helping Syria before with nuclear material and possibly chemical weapons now, but also Israel. And when the attacks started happening in Syria last night, the United States quickly said, well, it's not us. And everybody else was saying it's not us. Nobody will actually say that it's Israel. But what I noticed is that Saudi not complaining that Israel took action.
No, and I think it was very important for people to understand that Israel decided that they could take unilateral action. But again, it's because the United States is there to back them up.
Right.
And so it's, in a sense, Israel acting in a way that would help the United States and allow President Trump more time to decide exactly what is the appropriate action. I think it's very telling, though, that, you know, it was a year ago that he said Assad was not a priority for him, and that's when Assad did the chemical weapon attack then. And this time, it was his remarks in Ohio last week saying that it's time to get out of Syria, and now they act again. So it looks like whenever there's a sign from the U.S. government that maybe we're not paying full attention, Assad then sees that as a signal for him to take action. He can do what he wants to do. And to me, this is very troubling because it opens the door not only to Russia and Iran, but to also Islamic State coming back into the picture, and if not Islamic State, then Al-Qaeda. And don't forget the Taliban is right next door.
Kimberly, the thing that's so disgusting about Assad is his willingness over and over again to attack children. And in out of these 40 that were killed, many of them were children. Now, their children and innocents are dying by lots of other means as well. But, you know, chemical weapons, is that going to be our red line?
Yeah, well, it should be, right? And it should have been a long time ago. And now this is an opportunity for President Trump to show his resolve and his strength that he will not tolerate these kind of atrocities and the genocide that's been going on over there. Really, this guy is just, it's disgusting and outrageous, a lack of any kind of morality or humanity to murder children in this way. Obviously, Israel stepped up to the plate. They, like we said, they have the backing, you know, of the United States. I think that is a significant strategic partnership that really is going to be able to change the course of history in that region, which is so fraught with so many problems in terms of just the geocomplexities of that region, politically and otherwise. But right now, this is going to say a lot, I think, also about, you know, President Trump, his presidency, his handle on foreign affairs and national security. He has shown the strength before, and it has worked, and I think he's going to respond rather quickly in regards to this.
You know what?
Can I respond to one, though?
Oh,
about
sure.
what you, okay. You know, some big guy, bad guy, leaves a bar, and he's going to leave a bar, you don't throw something at the guy as he's leaving. You just hope he leaves. And what you said was that Trump saying that signaled Assad that there was a lack of attention, and therefore he could then take his own action. Why wouldn't he just do nothing and just let the big guy leave, let the American power go?
And I also think, if I just to add to that, just to reemphasize, what happened on Friday was that the talks between Assad and the rebels broke down. So I mean, I don't know if there was causation or correlation or whatever, but there was an action in Syria that maybe they weren't even paying attention to what President Trump was saying.
No, I think they were paying attention to Trump, but I think that as you said, you can't do one thing or the other. It might be, but I think for them, the United States is the counter, is the big guy walking out of the bar. Right. And once you see the big guy walk away, for Assad, it was, hey, this is my country. This is what, by the way, what Vladimir Putin said, that Assad is the legitimate president of Syria. And you can't, he says to Trump, you can't talk and act to a legitimately elected president in this way. And it's interesting that President Trump then said to Putin, who he's oftentimes, you know, reluctant to criticize, you're wrong. I was really struck by that.
Well,
and
I think they must have
wrong.
intel that says
I'm sorry,
that.
go ahead.
I just think that they must have intel that tells them that they know that, like, Russia there are like 119 million people or something. Like, this is a country that's trying to make some sort of investment in Assad, and they made a really bad bet in him.
Yeah,
So
and it goes on and on.
But now you have this seething cauldron of, as Kimberly was saying, the geocomplexities really makes for John Bolton having a big first day at the office as National Security
Situation room.
Advisor.
Welcome to the job, John.
Indeed. All right, next, former Attorney General Loretta Lynch breaking her silence on that infamous tarmac meeting. What she's saying about that, James Comey, and more next on The Five.
This is a Fox News alert. There's some breaking news today on President Trump's longtime personal attorney, Michael Cohen. The FBI raided his office earlier, seizing documents. More now from Chief White House correspondent John Roberts.
Jesse, good afternoon to you. We know now that the FBI raided not only Michael Cohen's business office, but also raided his apartment and a hotel room in which he has been staying. And I am told that the FBI took pretty much everything that they could find that was in the form of paper or electronic communications. Now, we don't know exactly what this has to do with, though in the course of seizing all the documents, and it could have just been because they were there as part of it, not necessarily what they were looking for, were documents related to the $130,000 payment that Michael Cohen made in October of 2016 to Stephanie Clifford, a.k.a. Stormy Daniels, as a part of her agreeing to that confidentiality agreement that she has been fighting with her attorney, Michael Avenatti, to get out of for some time. We got a statement from Stephen Ryan, who is Michael Cohen's attorney, the attorney representing the attorney, if you will, who said the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York executed a series of search warrants and seized the privileged communications between my client, Michael Cohen, and his clients. Ryan was advised that by federal prosecutors that the New York action was in part due to a referral from the special counsel, Robert Mueller. So that's where we now have the tie between what's going on here in Washington and what happened there in New York. Cohen's attorney, Ryan, goes on to complain about the seizure of privileged documents, saying it was completely inappropriate and unnecessary. It resulted in the unnecessary seizure of protected attorney-client communications between a lawyer and his clients. Ryan going on to say there was no reason for them to do this because Cohen provided thousands of non-privileged documents to Congress and also sat for depositions under oath. Stormy Daniels' attorney couldn't wait to show his glee at this latest development because he and Michael Cohen have been in a cage match over Stormy Daniels trying to get out of her non-disclosure agreement. Michael Avenatti in a statement to Fox News saying, as I predicted last week on CNN and MSNBC, Mr. Cohen has been placed in the crosshairs by Mr. Trump. He has been set up to take the fall. An enormous amount of misplaced faith has been placed on his shoulders, and I do not believe he has the mettle to withstand it. If I am correct, this could end very, very badly for Mr. Trump and others. Again, we do not know the substance of what the FBI was looking for, only that it came in part from a referral from the special counsel's office. And of course, Robert Mueller has been looking into Russia collusion. He's also been looking into the financial dealings of Paul Manafort and Rick Gates. He's got Michael Flynn on making false statements. He's got George Papadopoulos on making false statements. It would seem logical to assume, Jesse, that somewhere in the course of his investigation, Robert Mueller came upon some information that he thought that the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York would want to know about. The U.S. Attorney's Office found that it was compelling enough that they sent the FBI to Michael Cohen's office, home, and hotel room to pick it all up.
Wow, John, serious developments. Thanks a lot. We're going to continue to update you guys on this as we learn more. Meanwhile, it gave Jim Comey a queasy feeling. That's how the former FBI director felt when his former boss, Obama Attorney General Loretta Lynch, pushed him to downplay the Clinton email investigation. It was Lynch's tarmac meeting with Hillary's husband, Bill, that ultimately led Comey to go public with the news of the probe.
Yes, in a ultimately conclusive way. That was the thing that capped it for me, that I had to do something separately to protect the credibility of the investigation, which meant both the FBI and the Justice Department.
Were there other things that contributed to that you can describe in an open session?
Probably the only other consideration that I guess I can talk about in an open setting is that at one point the Attorney General had directed me not to call it an investigation, but instead to call it a matter, which confused me and concerned me.
Now, in a new interview ahead of Comey's book release, Lynch contradicts his account.
This was a very sensitive investigation, as everyone knew. And the issue when he and I sat down at that time, which I think was early in the fall of 2015, was whether or not we were ready as a department to confirm an investigation going on, when we typically do not confirm or deny investigations into anything, with rare exceptions.
To the extent, though, that he noted it, that it bothered him, did he go to you and question your credibility with regard to the Clinton case?
We had a full and open discussion about it.
He didn't raise any concerns about it?
And concerns were not raised.
Okay, Kimberly, what do you make about Comey not raising the concerns directly to his boss's face? Do you think that's because speaking to his boss, or he was a little bit of a coward? If you're going to say, hours later, oh, it really concerned me, but you never raised it, how do you square that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have a concern, you need to raise it right away, promptly, and with, speed and efficiency to make sure that you have the record set straight and that you've addressed any concerns you have, because otherwise then you're in an explain game later on. And now you see here it's a problem because you have prior inconsistent statements, which could be highly problematic, any of this before the Congress, the IG, FBI, et cetera. There's a tremendous amount of exposure here. And I believe that she is trying to get out ahead of it with this book coming out, all of it, to make sure and try and clean up the record for herself.
Juan, what do you think about the dispute?
Well, it's kind of puzzling to me, to be quite honest. I don't understand why Jim Comey would say that. Now, we all know Comey's got this book coming out. It's going to be a big deal for the rest of the month. And I'm just curious. Now, Loretta Lynch said she wants to see what Comey has to say about why he came out at the last moment and had that long press conference in which he said they were not going to go ahead and file charges against Hillary Clinton, but here's all the horrible things and the carelessness that she displayed in the use of the private email server. And she says she didn't understand it. It was a surprising way for the Attorney General to be told by the FBI director of his decision. And so I think that she said, let's look for the book. Let's see how he explains it. It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of backstabbing among people who used to work for each other.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I wonder if Comey has any of those. Kimberly has to remind me of the term for it, but those contemporaneous notes to file. Yes. What's it called? Like the
memos?
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Like a memo to file or something?
Memo to file that he referred to, that he said he took all of these
right,
notes
because we know that Comey did that. He says he did that with President Trump, and I wonder if he was troubled or concerned by something that Loretta Lynch had asked him, if he had a similar memo, and if I were. Any of us had a chance to interview him, we might actually ask that question. I'm also curious as to why she's doing this now, and then it occurred to me. Comey has no natural partisan support anymore.
You're right.
Not on the right or the left. The Clinton people probably dislike him more than the Republican people, for sure.
Yeah.
So they want to get out ahead of this to try to basically muddy the waters for Comey going into what is going to be a very big to-do with his book tour.
Yeah, that's interesting, Greg. Dana brings up a great point. There's going to be people on the left criticizing him during the book tour, and then obviously people on the right. Is that going to make him look fair and balanced, do you think, or is this going to look like enemy number one?
Yeah, everybody hates him, but it always goes back to the Clintons.
Right.
Wherever you go, there they are.
Yep.
Like it's like that weird horror film. They would start. You look around, there they are, just behind the bushes, and it's the poor Democrats. They're like a building, constantly trying to clean up after a lousy tenant that just left behind a complete mess. But regarding this pair, he calls her queasy. She says he's full of bull. They're like two siblings, pointing at each other over a broken window. What? Just blame it on the Clintons.
Blame it on the Clintons.
9 times out of 10, you're going to be right.
All right.
You're going to be right.
Pin the tail on the Clintons.
Yes.
Popular game here.
Like the segment on the 5 every day.
Yes.
Ahead, a victim and a hero of Parkland massacre finally leaves the hospital and calls out officials for failing to prevent the shooting. Up next.
So it's been over 6 weeks since the Parkland shooting. During that time, we've seen marches, town halls, and media spectacles, both great and small. Heroes and villains have been made, spokespersons anointed by cable news. But up until last Wednesday, one person didn't take part because he had been shot 5 times as he tried to protect his fellow classmates. Anthony Borez was released from the hospital, a teen no one had heard from until now. He saved upwards of 20 students. His attorney read a statement from him which criticized Sheriff Scott Israel and others for knowing the shooter was bad news before the attack, but still did nothing.
Both of you failed us students, teachers, and parents alike on so many levels. I want to ask you today to please end your policy and agreement that you will not arrest people committing crimes in our school. I want all of us to move forward and end the environment that allows people like Nicholas Cruz to fall through the cracks. You knew he was a problem years ago and you did nothing.
Borez was too weak to talk, but his statement was strong. It reminded us of the facts. His criticism took us back to what was revealed post-attack, that tons of calls were made about the shooter over the years, that he had emotional and disciplinary issues before coming to Stoneman Douglas. He was abusive. Still none took action. The statement also mentioned the Promise program, which allows young criminals to avoid arrest. So the question is, will this messenger receive the same platform and spotlight that others received? It's a sad reality in the world of cable news. We have to move on. Other tragedies await. But Anthony cannot move on, which is why we should press pause and listen to what he's trying to tell us. He cannot move on. The fact that Scott Israel can is a disgrace.
Terrible.
Yeah, Kimberly, we've heard very little from Scott Israel. The guy used to seek the spotlight, but now he's under a rock.
Yeah, because now the facts are raining down on him, and he cannot escape the truth. He tried to blame others. He demonized the NRA, Dana Lash. He blamed the people at the school. He blamed everybody except for accepting responsibility for choices that he could have made that would have prevented this. When you have authorities being called 30 different times to Cruz's house and nobody does anything, like, what else do you want someone to do in terms of getting involved and trying to do something to prevent future harm and violence and massacre? And if you don't learn from this situation, you just focus just on guns, you're missing the point. And for this individual to still have a job, the fact that he has not been suspended and removed from his position, to me, is just astonishing.
You know, Dana, his father also called out Israel for using his son right after the shooting as a photo opportunity, and apparently he gave his dad $100. There was just something very tacky
please keep
and
your money
crass about this guy.
Absolutely. And it's amazing that it will be interesting once he's strong enough to talk, to hear from him about what kind of bravery it took for him to be able to stand in front of that gun and take the bullets for his students. And I'm sure that they're looking forward to him getting back to school. He's really a remarkable young man, very inspiring.
You know, Juan, he came from Venezuela for this. You know, I mean, the irony of leaving a place that is known for incredible high crime, and you know, and he wanted to be a professional soccer player, which isn't going to happen.
I hope it does happen. I hope he recovers fully. What struck me from this, it was very touching, was I think this is something from the heart of American students. And he says, I just want to go to school and feel safe. And I don't feel safe right now going back to school, is what he said. And to me, that just struck me as, you know what, this is no spin. This is not taking sides. This is a young man saying, I think school should be safe and I should feel protected when I go to school. I do think it's about guns. I thought last week in the shooting at YouTube, you know, easy access to guns. But from his perspective, even if we never settle a gun argument in this country, kids should be able to feel safe in school. And he makes a strong, compelling point. By the way, the sheriff went to visit him at the hospital. So when you hear this from him, don't think, oh, this guy's just upset the sheriff hasn't paid attention. He's saying this despite that. Thank you for the visit, but you should have done more.
Yeah, exactly. And he felt that it was a photo op. Do you think, what should be done with Israel?
Well, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement...
The bad Israel, not the good Israel.
Yeah, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement has an open investigation, and they'll submit their findings to Governor Rick Scott, and he can determine whether or not to fire him or keep him, and that should be coming momentarily. There's a great ambush by a local reporter, I believe from ABC, that went and tracked Sheriff Israel down and got in his face pretty aggressively and said, you know, do you accept any responsibility? You know, what are you doing? You have to answer to some of this. And he weaseled out of it. and he didn't look like he was in control, Sheriff Israel. And then he followed him, and he was at a political event later that day. You know, with all the stuff going on in his community, he's out there hobnobbing with politicians and, you know, raising money and politicking. He just has a lot of misplaced priorities, like the Promise program, got to get rid of it. Ideally, it's so you don't want to arrest a lot of young black teenagers in high school. That's why the Obama administration came in and pushed it hard, because, you know, it hurts their ability to get into college and things like that. I get that, but it can't be blanket. I mean, this guy, like you said in the monologue, was abusing students in school, was suspended, was violent. This is a guy that had to have been arrested, because then that would have triggered the inability to him purchasing a firearm. And then, you know, for CNN to shine a spotlight away from Israel and then towards the NRA does such a disservice to the country. And they should be shining a spotlight on things like what Rubio's doing. And you and I have talked about it. I think it's something like the gun purchase restraining order. So you're balancing the ability to have the Second Amendment with, at the same time, protecting public safety. If some guy looks like he's a mental health nut, you know, you have a judge adjudicate it, and then you take the gun away.
But, you know, the judges and the social service people also didn't.
They blew it too.
Oh, okay. But because I don't think it, you know, I understand that you guys are so upset with Israel, but I'm just telling you that there are lots of people who had the opportunity to act on Mr. Cruz and didn't act.
You're right. True. The FBI, the locals, and what did Israel do? He set up a perimeter outside the school when the shooting was going on, and everything tells you go in and you confront the shooter.
Well, that wasn't Israel.
All right.
Well, and it was his deputies.
Right.
Just so you know, there is a GoFundMe page, and a lot of those, you got to check them out to make sure they're real for his financial support for the family, and it's already raised $800,000. It's a legit GoFundMe page if you want to check it out. Thanks.
He would use his body as a human shield to save 20 lives. God bless him.
So gun control hasn't stopped murders in the UK, so the London mayor is now trying out knife control. How will that work out? Next.
Agreed. There is a big crime crisis across the pond. The murder rate has soared this year in London, more than 50 homicides since January. Most of the victims were stabbed to death, as guns are tightly restricted in Britain. So the mayor there has decided to now ban knives from the streets. Sadiq Khan tweeted, "No excuses. There is never a reason to carry a knife. Anyone who does will be caught, and they will feel the full force of the law." Greg.
Yeah, are they going to blame it on the Cutlery and Allied Trade Research Association?
Right.
It's crazy. It's not just knives, by the way. It's acid. There's a lot of really crazy, violent crime. Their murder rate exceeded, I think, New York with knives. And they also have gun crime. Even with strict gun control, they still have gun crime. But if you look at the knives, their knife problem, it's very similar to our handgun problem. Organized gang crime and lousy sentencing. These are the two problems that are the reason why there are gangs getting arrested. They go into the prison for 3 months and then they're out. And it's because they're not being sentenced enough for the guns. You sentence guns and you sentence knives, the same thing. You go away a long, long time. That'll do it.
All right,
and arm the cops, please.
Yes. And arm the cops. So, Dana, what do you make of Sadiq Khan, who's had his fair share of back and forth with President Trump, now going after knives? Acid will be next.
Well, I don't think this particular thing has anything to do with President Trump. But his statement that anybody anyone who's carrying a knife will be caught it's insane. That's not going to happen. A lot of people are going to have, unless they're going to have like a massive drone program with metal detectors like flying through the streets of London.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. I mean, it avoids a similar thing that we talk about, which is the root cause. Why are murders up? Well, okay. Is it gang activity? If it's gang activity, get to the root cause of that. I mean, other big cities have dealt, like New York City has, with major homicide rates that were just way too high. It wasn't knives here, it was guns. But get after it and you figure out and you break up the root cause, and then you won't have to ban people's knives from their kitchens.
But that might be, that might be like the stop and frisk. That could be bigoted. We've been told if you profile,
profiling,
if you profile,
that's the thing. So, Jesse, when you compare this to a lot of the rhetoric that we see in this country regarding guns and a focus on the weapon, the instrument used to harm or kill, now we see the focus here is knives. But again, they're missing the larger point, which is why is it happening to begin with? Why are people choosing to take this kind of assaultive conduct and towards others?
I thought it was an Onion headline when I first read the story. I didn't even believe it.
Yeah.
We joke about this when there was that mall slasher, the ISIS guy. This was on the heels of some ISIS shooting, and the left said, oh, we have to ban guns, and then some bad guy stabs some person, and you say, oh, well, what are we going to do next, ban knives?
Yep.
And then everybody laughs on Twitter, but this is not a joke. This is real. This guy cons like the de Blasio of London. It keeps getting worse and worse and worse for him. It's turned into a joke. You don't, if something happens that's bad, you don't just disarm everybody. You know, I think if you can't have a gun to protect yourself in London, then maybe you need a knife. So people sometimes protect themselves. Or what if you're just carrying your knives to the kitchen or to the restaurant and you work in the kitchen or, you work somewhere? He's going to go and just, people have things sticking out of their pockets. Let me see. What do you got? Oh, well, no. I'm a butcher.
Permit.
What, a butcher's going to be like under siege?
A Ginsu knife salesperson? Yes.
I know. You can't go door to door anymore. It's crazy. And London's, they're in a heap of trouble.
Well, and also, Jesse, his Twitter game is not good. It was not scary. It wasn't fire and fury like President Trump against
No, sad.
Kim Jong-un. Okay, so what do you make of it? Is he on to something here, Juan, or is this fraught with problems?
Well, I'm interested in this because I was listening to Greg and I was thinking, so imagine if we were watching Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble and they'd say, no more rocks. Get those rocks out of your pocket. David and Goliath, you keep throwing these rocks, so we're going to take the rocks away from you, young man. The reality is, and the thing that really struck me here was that there are more murders in London than New York City so far in 2018. And that's why the mayor is acting. And by the way, you guys are wrong on stop and search. The mayor, is in fact proposing that the police stop and search people for these.
Oh, so he's
knives.
better than de Blasio.
No, de Blasio.
Wasn't he originally against it and then he changed his mind?
Know. Oh, you mean
I think he was originally, I think he was originally, but like years ago, and now he has to come around.
But I will say,
before he was against it, then he was for it again. Okay, got
right,
it.
but you guys want to then say this is the equation, that guns and knives, and therefore he is to be mocked as if we don't have a problem with guns. I think we do.
We are lectured on guns from Brits every day.
Oh, I see. So it's you're not upset over the knives. This is really
the reason we
guns should be fine.
The reason we have the guns is because of tyrannical governments like Great Britain.
Oh, is that?
Well, yeah, threatening the rights of the colonists.
That's true, historically.
My man is a historian.
It doesn't take much. It's pretty obvious.
World. He's got his own set of encyclopedias. It's amazing. All right, coming up, the liberal media has officially gone completely bonkers over the Russia investigation and President Trump. The proof? We have it all next.
As you know, the president says the press is biased against him. Perhaps he's not imagining it when it comes to some liberal media. Take MSNBC's Joy Reid. She's speculating about the president resisting arrest if Mueller's team comes calling.
Crazy.
What if he refuses to open the White House door? What if the secret, what if he fires any Secret Service agent who would allow the federal marshals in? What if Donald Trump simply decides, I don't have to follow the law. I refuse to be held under the law. No marshal can get into this White House, and any Secret Service agent that defies me is fired.
What do you say, Kimberly?
I just think it's nuts. It's nuts. I mean, where do they come up with this? That's news coverage to say maybe the president's going to refuse to follow the law or obey orders or fire Secret Service if Mueller comes after him. Like, knock, knock. Who's there? Mueller. Oh, no. No, Mueller. You can't come in. And whoever lets him, they're going to be fired. To me, I think the whole thing is just ridiculous. So we already knew that they were biased against him. It's just further evidence proffered in that direction.
Well, play it out, Jesse. So we know what happened today, right?
Yeah.
So the FBI goes after Michael Cohen, his lawyer.
Right.
But so if the FBI or somebody shows up and says, Mr. President, if you're not testifying before the grand jury, you have to come with us. We're going to take you to the jail. I mean, is this in any way realistic?
Yeah, he'd probably like send Jared Kushner after him, put him out there. He'd calm everything down. I'm pro Joy Reid on this. There's 24 hours of cable news coverage. People speculate. They try to have a little fun. They're trying to get some excitement, trying to get some ratings. We've done this before where you say, oh, well, what if? It's a fantasy. They fantasize on MSNBC all the time.
Island.
It's Fantasy Island, and that's been working for them. That's fine. This is par for the course over there, though.
Wow, that was a surprise to me. So let me ask you, Dana, if you go to the reality, and the reality is that John Dowd was advising the president not to stand for an interview. Jay Sekulow and Ty Cobb seem to be telling him, we have reports today, prepare for the possibility of an interview. What do you say?
I say it is all such speculation and hypotheticals that I don't deal in any of it. I just deal in with the reality and what we know. And I also think that, if you can spend the hour that you have to give on television any way that you want. I do think that the Democrats have ceded so much policy ground, and they're talking so much about Russia that they have got to figure out a way to pivot. They're in a perfect position this year, just because the way that the politics are and the map is, that they could actually win back the House. But if they don't start talking about Democratic policies of why it would be better to vote for the Democrat than the Republican in this midterm, they're just wasting their time.
So, Greg, it's like the Wicked Witch. They think that the Democrats are like, oh, will she come out? Will she come out?
I don't know. I was thinking if MSNBC is Fantasy Island, Chris Matthews has to be Tattoo.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Who's Mr. Roar?
Yeah, but you know what the thing is? What Joy did is exactly what I do when I'm at the gym. I daydream, what would happen if I win the lottery? Or what if I'm looking great when I run into an ex? You do that to pass the time, but you run it through your mind to make yourself feel good. But she actually verbalized it, which is kind of interesting. Could be an interesting segment that we all do where we verbalize our daydreams.
No, let's not do that. No. Are we on delay?
Mine's pretty innocent, in case you want me to get
Of course it is. Yes.
Yours are like, I
play
like
tennis
dogs,
with my dog.
diet,
Oh, my gosh. All right, enough, guys. One more thing. It's up next.
So it's time now for one more thing. I'll go first. It's Jasper's birthday. He's 6 years old today. He comes every year on his birthday. Jesse can't believe his good fortune. And Greg has a cute little toy that he keeps, well, it's not really cute. It's terrifying him, but he's obsessed with it, and it's really good. Anyway, always thank you all for the support for Jasper getting to come on the show. And John O'Hurley gave us a shout out on the Beverly Hills Dog Show this weekend. Watch.
First will be the Vizsla, please.
The Vizsla is your winner. Dana Perino, you must be a happy woman right now.
Thanks, John O'Hurley. You're the best. All right, Kimberly.
That is very, very cute. And I wish Jasper happy birthday on text. I text him through your phone.
One of his
very cute. So I had the distinct pleasure and privilege this weekend on Saturday night in D.C. to be the mistress of ceremonies for the 6th annual Operation Renewed Hope Foundation, their annual Purple and Gold Gala. And it was fantastic. And Sean Spicer, friend of the show, was the keynote speaker. And he was absolutely fantastic, very funny and smart, and was really nice, taking pictures with everyone. And he even gave me a challenge coin for the Office of the Press Secretary.
Oh, that's nice.
There you go. And I attended with my son Ronan, and that's Ronan, myself, and then his dad, Eric Valenci, who is on the board, and his grandma, Roanne, myself, a little road dog in white ties, very cute. And then also Lieutenant Cochran is in the picture as well with Eric, and that is Captain Avila, who was pronounced dead 2 times for 7 minutes. Really just an incredible war hero. And he sang the God Bless America, and also that's with Flags of Valor that also honors veterans, which is really great. So this is wonderful. They want to end veteran homelessness by providing a range of services, and they work with landlords and rental agencies throughout D.C. to help and find homes. And that's 2 of my best friends from UC Davis that came to D.C. to see me, Charito and Babette with Ronan. It was a nice surprise.
Sit down. Okay, Greg gets to go next.
All right, you know what it is. It's Greg's Unicorn News. It's actually National Unicorn Day.